Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I am Chris Clements.
And we've got a interesting, this goes right into faith, freedom, free enterprise.
Pretty much everything.
This latest Wall Street Journal poll, which kind of tests, and this was, maybe we should have Bill McInturf on. He was one of the pollsters on this.
Yeah, we should. That would be great.
From Public Opinion Strategies. But they did a big poll. This is testing where Americans are on all kinds of cultural, political, religious issues. And it is discouraging.
Well, the opening line of the article, patriotism, religious faith, having children, and other priorities that helped define the national character for generations are receding in importance to Americans, a new Wall Street Journal NORC poll finds. And not just receding, plummeting based on this polling. It's really, really discouraging, actually.
So, Chris, what are some of the things that jumped out at you?
The two things that jumped out at me actually were more patriotism, which in 1998 was over 60%, almost 70%.
70%, yeah.
And now is dipping below 40%, and having children. And that's been on the decline since that time.
Yeah.
And those two things, along with religion too, but we've known that religion as a construct has been on decline for quite some time.
And this is people thinking that patriotism is important.
Yeah.
Or having children is important.
That having children is important.
It's not that they're having children.
No.
This is whether they think it's important.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah, because the societal construct, the values of which the country is founded and how society organizes itself is based on patriotism, love of country, duty, honor, religion, which creates bedrock in society, and then having children, which creates joy and dedication and love and legacy. And so if you're not investing in those things, what type of country will we have? This looks a lot like China.
Yeah. Which is really,
if you want to just jump to that sort of, analogy, it does. And unfortunately, I think this is accelerating. I think what has accelerated it is COVID.
Yeah.
And the lockdowns and the lies and mistruths and misinformation that was told about COVID.
Right.
And the remedies of what we were told we had to do.
But I think that I think
it's accelerated.
Sure, I think COVID accelerated some of this, but this was clearly. If we're going back to '98, and we had basically 70% of people saying that it was important to have patriotism. Keep in mind, this is before 2001. This is before 9/11. And I got to believe that after 9/11, it probably went even higher. So the decline is even more precipitous than it appears in the poll based on 98 numbers, because I'm guessing it was higher after 9/11, and then it has plummeted since then. And I think I don't understand. And it goes to people who believe that America is the greatest nation on earth, that number is declining, whether or not America, the United States is an exceptional nation, or there's a sense of exceptionalism. It is astounding to me.
Here's a quote from the article, which is prominently in the Wall Street Journal. Tolerance for others, talking about the tribalism that we're experiencing in America right now, deemed very important by 80% of Americans as recently as 4 years ago, has fallen to 58% since.
Wow.
We are becoming more and more divided, and the issues of the day, the things that we've seen this week and other weeks, it's not helping.
Yeah. Well, and it's, it goes to the whole concept, the concept that we've got to get to a point where we can have these vigorous, challenging debates without hating each other. We don't have to have hate. We can have strong disagreements about policy, about the direction, about, you name it. But the level of hatred that's out there now.
And yet it's being, I would argue, it's being propagated and it's growing and incubating in our sources of higher learning. You look at what happened at Stanford Law School a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago with the Fifth Circuit judge who was shouted down, cussed at, screamed at, everything under the sun, just because of some opinions that he'd written regarding LGBTQ issues and transgenderism and other issues, and also people he had represented in private practice, and all of it was thrown at him, and yet these are law students. They weren't acting like Stanford law students. They were acting like maybe Cal State Northridge law students.
Well, they weren't acting like law students. Let's
At
put
all.
it that way. They
Yeah.
were acting like high schoolers.
And yet they want to go before a judge and argue a case, probably for somebody who they won't agree with anyway, because that's
the
part
thing
of what you do as a lawyer.
What's astounding to me is that these are law students. You would expect that these would be people who are more serious, that they're more thoughtful, that they understand that there is a space for debate.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the whole concept of law school is to argument, make your argument and be persuasive. It's astounding to me. It gives me great concern about the quality of lawyers coming up out of the system.
Well, our
right now.
institutions of higher learning are becoming bubbles unto themselves, where those of the left are able to do and say whatever they want. And yet, if there's a contrary voice, if that voice actually raises itself, a conservative voice, they're shouted down and called a bigot, whatever they're called, racist, everything else. There's no debate,
which is
that's being allowed.
which is not a constructive argument. That is not being
98%
persuasive.
of college professors are all leftists.
Yeah.
And you can't create a society that is invested in one another with that type of construct coming out of higher learning.
Yeah.
And it's happening in high schools and in elementary schools too. Parents are the big fight on this Parents' Bill of Rights bill is we're not going to allow you to indoctrinate our children.
Right.
We want to know
And
what's
yet
going on.
AOC would say that we're being fascist.
Which is
What? Parents having a say over their kids' education is fascism?
Sandy Cortez from Westchester.
I just find that absurd.
But it's all wrapped up in, I think, and this poll captures it.
Yeah, the poll.
Where
I
we
mean,
are.
if you haven't seen it, go look at the Wall Street Journal poll. And it gives us something to contemplate and to think about how can we fix this, because I think that it's going to be incumbent on anyone who cares about the future of this country that we've got to fix that trend.
Yes.
And we can't do it by screaming and yelling. We have to do it by gentle persuasion and explaining why the United States is a great country, why it is the greatest country in the world. I mean, it's the one place that the vast majority of the world wants to come to, as evidenced by our immigration issues. I mean, we are a beacon, a shining city on a hill. I'll continue to say it, and I don't care who says, "Oh, Reagan, that's just old school thinking." Well, yeah,
It's
you know
really
what?
not old. It's the oldest school thinking because it's biblical.
It goes
It's
back
right
to
out
John
of the
Winthrop
Bible.
talking about it. It's the Bible. I mean, there are certain things that this country has been, the ideals that the country was founded upon that are timeless. It's not old fashioned. It's timeless. Edmund Burke. I mean, people need to understand who that was. The English philosopher, lawmaker, writer, conservative thinker. I mean, maybe considered the father of conservatism.
Modern conservatism, for sure.
I mean, these are things that are important and that obviously are being lost as we move forward, and getting away from what Reagan talked about in his last speech from the Oval Office, that we're only one generation away from losing freedom.
Yeah.
Because if we don't educate our kids about the importance of freedom, then we're going to lose it. And we are on the precipice, I would say, at this point.
And people have to understand where our societal construct comes from. I mean, so much of it comes from faith.
Yeah.
So much of it comes from the church. It was the church that started the universities. It was the church
Right.
through diligent, observation and exploration began the process of science as we know it today. I mean, all these things came out of religion, out of faith, and yet we have a society that's trying to tear it all down.
Take away faith. Yeah. No, we need to get back to absolutely a deeper understanding of faith, and recognizing that there are certain things, that is everything, that comes from God.
Yeah,
And we have to treat it that way.
And that fundamentally, we are a Judeo-Christian nation.
Yeah.
And people don't like to say that, but it's absolutely true. It was founded on those principles, and it was founded, the shining city on a hill was part of our founding.
Well,
from the beginning.
and being founded on those principles doesn't mean that if you're not Judeo or Jewish or Christian, that you don't have a place here.
No.
It just means that the foundations allow us to have diversity and allow us to have community, regardless of what our background is. That's the whole point. So, I don't know.
No, we can keep ranting on this all along. I mean, we had an incredible tragedy this week in Nashville, and the tribalism is already beginning out of something that was that was
happened
unspeakable
immediately.
evil.
Right. And it's
And
I will
here's
let
the
me
other
correct
thing.
you on one thing.
Okay.
I don't like the word tragedy, because in my mind tragedy is something that's nature or accidental. This was evil. This was evil.
I was just going to say that. I mean, we use the word tragedy, of course, to describe what we can't describe, and this was unmistakable evil
Yeah.
and targeted and evil.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that nobody wants to talk about in our society, that evil exists,
It
that
does
there is
exist.
an evil one. And if there was ever an example of that, it was this week.
Yep.
And in every
Every shooting.
and
it's evil.
and all of them have a straight line running right through them if you go back and look at it. It's severe mental illness. And that's exacerbated by a bunch of different factors.
all kinds of different factors, and every one has its own unique situation, but all of it is driven by someone who's obviously very disturbed
and spiritually empty.
yes, evil has taken hold for sure.
All right, so
On that
uplifting.
happy note,
but that's I mean, to our guest we had earlier, that's the fight that we have as believers, as men and women of faith, is that we have, now is the time to pray, now is the time to hold firm,
yep,
because the enemy's on the march.
that's right. So hold firm, everyone.
Yeah. God
All right.
bless.
Have a great
All
weekend.
right.
Talk to you later.
Bye.